Have you noticed the older you get, the faster time seems to be going by? I don't know about you guys, but since turning 21, life feels like it's picked up a couple notches and I'm somehow already 23. This year alone has already flown by, and in just 3 quick months we're gonna start saying Happy New Year. With so much going on and the speed of life that life is moving at right now, it can be a little and honestly very scary. In this video, I'm going to be going over why life feels like it starts to move a lot faster the older you get, as well as break down how to actually slow down time and make your days feel longer and more fulfilling, as well as provide a little bit of a wake-up call as to, are you using your time wisely? But before I explain all of these things, I wanted to quickly explain why I'm making this video, because it's the why that I'm making this video that actually kind of provides insights to how I came up with the answers. So really quick, I just went on a trip to Costa Rica. But while I was there, a really huge thing that I noticed was that my perception of time was completely different than in my regular day-to-day life. And yes, when you're on vacation, time seems to feel a little bit slower because you don't have work and all of these things, but each activity felt 2 to 3 times longer than a usual regular day-to-day activity. Just to give you a first example, the first day we woke up around 6:30, I ate breakfast and we went to a national park, and we came back out, went to the beach for a little bit, went to lunch, and after all of these activities, it was somehow only 1 in the afternoon. Whereas to me, I had honestly thought it would be 3 or 4 in the afternoon. So let's get right into it. Why does time feel so much faster when you're older? To best explain this, a study was done by the American Psychology Association a few years back. And this study was called The Routine and the Perception of Time. But basically the overall purpose of the study was this. A bunch of students were taken from outside and put into this study and were split into 2 groups. The first group was called the routine group and the other group was called the non-routine group. And each group of students were given a chunk of numbers, and they were made to do a very simple task. And the simple task was this. Out of all of the numbers that were given to each group, a set of numbers were underlined. And all these students had to do was count the amount of numbers and add them all up to how many numbers were underlined. The only difference between the routine group and the non-routine group was that the routine group had only one specific number continuously underlined, and that was the number 5. Whereas in the non-routine group, it was completely randomized. It had a bunch of numbers that were underlined. Once each student in each group had finished counting, they were then asked to say approximately how long do you think it took to find and add all of these numbers. On average, the students in the routine group found it to take 129 seconds, whereas on the non-routine group, they had felt like it took 168 seconds to count the numbers. This indicated a 25% increase between the 2 groups, making it statistically significant. Basically, the finding of the study was this. When we do routine things day in and day out, they make our perception of time a lot faster. And the reason for this is our brains have evolved to do this on purpose, to save us from using so much energy and effort when we don't need to. Think about if we actually had to use our brain for things that we do every single day. Think about how boring and how exhausting that would be. Routine is boring anyway. Imagine actually having to think about doing each thing. But anyways, the older that we get, the more into a routine that we get into. We go to bed the same time, we wake up at the same time, probably eat the same things, take the same route to work, wear the same clothes, sit in the same seats, eat the same lunch or go to the same spots, come back on that same route, and then go to bed. We do the same things every single day. Whereas when we're young, we're learning and we're doing completely new things every single day. Now, routines are really, really good and will keep you productive and focused, especially if there's goals that you want to hit, but they can definitely be a little bit boring and repetitive and make life feel like it's fleeting at times. So the takeaway of this study would be to add a little bit of newness into your daily activities. Maybe take a new route or a new way to school. Maybe change up your lunch spot that you go to, sit in a new seat. Or after work, completely change up your after work activities rather than just sitting there and scrolling mindlessly. Maybe go out for a walk. Now, with that being said, this brings me into the second part. How can we actually slow down time? I've mentioned this in other videos, but obviously you can't slow down time in a literal sense. You can't add more seconds or minutes to a day or add more seconds in a minute to get more output. But what you can change is your perception of time. And the way that you do this, as I've mentioned in other videos, is that you need to expand your consciousness and your mindfulness. With the way that we live in the modern age, our mind is never ever on the present moment. It's always thinking about what's next and the future. It's always, what am I going to eat for lunch? What am I going to eat for dinner? What is the work and the tasks that I have to do later? Because of this, always this overthinking about the future, we can never live in the moment. Most of us, without even knowing it, are living with camouflaged anxiety, and this anxiety never lets you actually live in the moment. I've mentioned it in several videos in the past, but I will mention it again. If you are not meditating in 2024, you are doing yourself a significant disservice. In this loud, distracted, and obnoxious world, you need something that will keep the mind quiet. What you need in a world like this is alone time, something that breaks you away from all of these things and actually keeps you present and keeps your mind quiet. I have yet to see another practice that exists in this world that immediately makes you calmer, more focused, more just in the moment than meditation. I won't go into the benefits too much. You can watch my previous videos or look about meditation online. But another huge way that I picked up on my trip of how I made the days feel longer without even knowing it was something called reflection. At the end of each day, we would sit around as a family just talking about the day, what we enjoyed. We would just talk about the past days, or we would even talk about our lives prior to coming to the trip. And it was this reflection that actually brought out significant points from each day. And by actually reflecting, by thinking about what was done or accomplished in the day, because there's so much going on in our daily lives that when you think about it at the end of the day, it just feels like one long blur, one big blur of just at random activities. But when you actually sit there and you force yourself to think about what you did at every single hour of the day or every little activity that you did, you suddenly realize, whoa, a lot happened today, and this is actually a pretty long day. You're letting your brain catch up with all of the activities. A great way to reflect on your daily life, regardless of how small you think these activities are, is talking to someone. But if you don't have that, it's journaling. Just spending 5 minutes about a moment that really stood out to you today, or just listing the things that you remember doing. Just trying to recall all the small little things that you did in the day will make your life so much more enjoyable and fulfilling. Like you're actually taking the time to realize your life. That's ultimately what you're doing. In a way, my YouTube channel is kind of a way of me reflecting. I talk about my past a lot on this channel. I also talk about things that I just have recently gone through, and I put it on YouTube just like this. In a way, this is me reflecting as well. So just find some sort of outlet that you can reflect, and it'll make your days so much more enjoyable. But with all of that, that brings me to the last point of this video. Are you using your time wisely? What are you doing on a daily basis? Or are you the type of person that is just wasting your life on top of it feeling like it's flying by? If this is how you feel, especially when you're young and in your early 20s, life is going to feel miserable because you have a lot of life ahead of you, and this is not how you should be feeling. Are you doing productive and healthy things, or are you feeding into things that are worsening your physical health, your mental health, things that are taking you away from God, all of these things? And if the answer is yes, I am doing these bad things, by not reflecting and not realizing what you're doing with your time, you will notice how easy it is to just spend 3 hours randomly scrolling, spending an hour watching a video on YouTube when you said you were going to study for your test. It's all of these little things that add up, that if you're not aware of what you're doing, then life can seem like it's going by really, really fast. A really quick actionable tip that I can give you to make you much more aware of your time is simply just wearing a small watch on your wrist. I have a normal, simple Casio watch that they wore in like the 1980s, and I constantly check it every like 30 minutes to an hour because I want to actually make sure that I'm using my time wisely. If I'm checking like this every little bit, I'm going to be much more aware of where I'm allocating my time. If time is the only asset that you have that is not infinite, money is always printed, you can always go and get more. Network, you can go and build that, but time, once that's gone, you will never get back. If you really think about it this way, each and every second that you're on this planet, each second that moves forward is 1 second closer to your death. So I hope you got a ton of value, and if you did, I wish you all the utmost success because there's plenty for all of us. Mwah.